Oh, okay. Welcome back. Ms. Boyd, what's our next staff report?
Thank you, Chair. We are SR2, presentation from the Communications and Engagement Division, Corporate Services Department regarding the 2025 Community Satisfaction Survey results for information.
Mr. Schumacher, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me. Before we have two members of our consultant team that conducted this survey for us that are going to run through the high-level survey results for you today. Before I turn it over to Tim Chan and Alan Daw, I just wanted to make a couple of remarks about the survey. First, that we're very appreciative of the board for seeing the value in doing this survey and approving it for the continuity of our effort to better understand satisfaction of our communities across the region. The survey provides a really invaluable mechanism for us for feedback that's both scientifically based and involves a very rigorous process. We have responses from a randomized, demographically representative sample of residents from across the region, and it's no easy feat to gather something like this. The process can give us great confidence in using these results to better understand the baseline for community concerns and for planning our activities in the coming years. The feedback we received through the survey is incredibly valuable to us in the organization for a number of reasons. First, it'll help inform the 2026 budget process for both staff and the board as they analyze the results. The results will also better help staff to understand community concerns and expectations for service delivery, informing annual work plans and project prioritization. And through benchmarking with previous surveys conducted, we get a much better understanding of our performance as an organization over time. So I hope the board will see the value in the results they received today and condone us to conduct this work again in the future. And then finally, before I pass it over to our consultants, I just want to thank the over 1,000 community members that participated in the survey. It was a bit rigorous, about running around 15, 16 minutes in length. So thanks to everybody who took the time to participate in it. And with that, I will turn it over to Tim Chan and Alan Daw from Leger.
Welcome.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for having us today. I will share my screen and not mute it. And as mentioned, share some of the top line findings of the community survey. Make sure I touch the right piece here, share this, and put it into presentation mode. And
yeah, that looks great.
Perfect. All right. Yes, thank you again for having us. Pleased to present these results. Overall, we'll go through a quick overview, although a great job was done already of how it was conducted, as well as some of the key findings. To start off, just wanted to remind people of why we did this. The main objectives being to gauge perceptions of the quality of life within the district. We wanted to hear from residents what the most important local issues are, as well as gauge their satisfaction with regional services and how important they are to residents. And lastly, we want to understand communication preferences in terms of how they would like to receive information and engage with the district. So a lot of information, there is a much larger report available in data tables. This is a really high level overview. And a really quick reminder of how it was conducted. We had the scientific part where we conducted a telephone survey. We contacted residents across the region. We had 412 completed over the phone. They were also given the option to complete it online if they wanted to. And we also had an open link survey, and this was really important to allow more residents to be able to share their feedback and hear from them as to what their priorities are and what their top issues are. And there can be some differences between what we call the scientific study and the consultation study, but there were many parallels, and there was quite an alignment in many areas as to what some of those key takeaways were. And the reason why we don't necessarily combine those pieces is because the consultation survey, the open link, allows anybody in there. And oftentimes it can tend to be people who are more opinionated. They have things to share. They can be, which is great and important. But we want to also make sure that we're getting those people who maybe wouldn't necessarily participate in an engagement survey. And that's why we're calling through a random digit dialing to ensure that they can share their perspective. And overall, this research was conducted at the end of February throughout the early parts of March. So jumping right into the findings, just wanted to start off with overall quality of life. We saw 88% giving their quality of life rating in their local area to be either very good or good. And this is down significantly from 2019, but not to take away that it's still quite high. 88% is a high benchmark in terms of those who are satisfied with living in the area. We also know a lot has happened since 2019, and so this is great to have, in a way, a new benchmark, the new reality that maybe you can benchmark against moving forward. We did see some differences in terms of regionality, as well as by age. Those who are older residents tended to have a higher quality of life ratings than those who are younger. And we see within some of the issues, those who are younger, and it's with much of our public opinion polling these days, younger residents are having a time with affordability and housing pieces. But focusing on the region in particular, we gave respondents the opportunity to share what they thought were the top 3 most important issues facing the Cowichan Valley Regional District. So we're comparing this to 2019 and 2016 metrics where they were only given one opportunity to type in. This was open-ended. So when you look at this total size of the bar, the 31% isn't directly comparable to 15. You're looking more at the dark blue area. But we do see the top issue being those who are unhoused, continuing to be the top issue. And we see the idea of housing availability and affordability jumping into being the second highest. It wasn't even a top mention in either of the 2019 or 2016 surveys. And going through, we can see things like infrastructure maintenance, healthcare, all the way down to areas about traffic and roads. So what this really allows you to do is say, well, housing is an important issue for the area, and as well as people across the region have different areas that they would like to focus on. We also asked about the different services available within the district. So starting off with, they were, depending on the area they were in, they might have seen a different selection of options or be read out a different selection of options. Here we saw it continues to be top levels of satisfaction for fire services, parks and trails, recycling, drop-off and depots, and then lower levels of satisfaction for things that also have a lower level of knowledge about within the survey. We see higher levels of don't know for things like land planning and use, public transit, economic development, building inspections. It's not relevant to all residents, but they, amongst those who are giving an opinion, tends to have a lower level of satisfaction. But also when looking at these services, I also tend to like to look at, okay, what's the proportion who are satisfied versus those who are dissatisfied? So you can see in some cases towards the bottom, things like land use and planning, there is a higher level of dissatisfaction than satisfaction overall, as well as those who are giving that rating of 3, which is kind of a neutral opinion. But overall, ratings are generally consistent. We didn't see any major fluctuations comparing to 2019 when we look at the level of satisfaction overall. Looking at it a little bit differently, we allowed people to select what they chose to be the most important service within the services available. And this is where we saw parks and trails standing out as number 1, water services and utilities, or water and sewer utilities, number 2, and so on. But there wasn't really one particular service that stood out as the number 1 overall. Different residents will see and feel that different areas are more important to them, depending on where they are and what life stage they're in. And then you layer that with the levels of satisfaction, which we saw earlier, We saw a similar side of Parks and Trails standing out as having a high level of satisfaction. Fire services also, the water utilities, emergency management, lower satisfaction overall. But as I mentioned previously, they also have a higher level of don't know. There's not as much prominence in terms of the top of mind understanding of the levels of services that are being provided there. For those who weren't satisfied, we gave them the opportunity to provide feedback on why they weren't satisfied. So here is an aggregate of some of the feedback they provided. There is the anonymous verbatim available to dive more into these particular areas. But what we see overall is across the majority of these, there isn't one particular thing that is driving dissatisfaction. It's kind of an assortment of things of, well, bylaw enforcement, they need to follow up on requests or an increase in enforcement, things like economic development, red tape, make it more affordable for new businesses. Transit, we do see the frequency of services and buses standing out as being a little bit or twice as big as the next one. So that could be an area to focus on as well. And then land use and planning and development, looking at sustainable development or better planning, lower taxes and affordability, pretty typical things that we might see and comments that we'd see within any municipal survey overall. We also asked about communication preferences, and overall, we started off with getting residents to rate their level of how they feel the communications are informing them of important decisions, and we've seen that trending up since 2016 from 27 to 32%. We see maintaining the gains achieved in 2019 about the CVRD consulting residents about topics and decisions and responding to feedback. Overall, though, it's about 1 in 5 in terms of those pieces. There is a high level of people who are giving the more neutral responses, and there are people who are saying, hey, it can be improved as well. But we do see these, the gains achieved in 2019 have been sustained, and improvements in terms of informing about the decisions there. Moving to the charts on the right, we see the top 3 ways that people have engaged and say that they've engaged with the CVRD in the past year. And well, as a survey person, I do like to see the participating telephone or online surveys being the number 1 thing. That's great to have about half of residents saying that they have participated in telephone or online surveys. About 1 in 4 calling the CVRD. And there's also has been an increase in people saying that they're contacting elected representatives to share their opinion. When we look at the top sources to obtain information about the CVRD, we actually have seen a decrease in those who are saying that they're visiting the website directly, which is interesting because and it's still the most common way, but it seems like there are less people who are using that as the primary source. Or thinking about it another way, because people were able to select multiple options, people are maybe just going there and not using multiple modes of contact. They might be just going to the website and not having to do internet searches, or they're confusing internet searches that take them to the CVRD website. But overall, website being prominent and having information easily accessible is important, as well as it is still important and continues to be important to have staff that people can directly speak with. When we look at the top 3 preferred ways to receive information, email is and continues to be, or is becoming even more prominent in terms of a way to receive information. Direct mail continuing to be about 1 in 4. People will have different ways, but it shows that collect emails, share information that way. Residents are receptive to that to receive information, as well as giving it as a way to allow them to share feedback as well. And looking at communication pieces previously, being responsive to emails can be important. Having these public meetings, as well as being accessible through traditional mail. So we also just wanted to highlight a little bit about the differences between the scientific survey and the consultation survey. And overall, looking at that quality of life rating, we do see very similar scores in terms of the proportion who are giving good or very good ratings. We see the top issues differing, the unhoused being a top issue amongst those who responded through the scientific survey, whereas taxation, municipal government spending being the top issue that was typed in amongst those who were responding through the open link that was available. And when we looked at the satisfaction ratings, it was interesting. Fire services, parks and trails, they're actually very close overall in terms of 1-2 ratings. And on the next slide, Tim will go into a little bit more. Just seeing that those are and continue to be the top areas that have that residents are satisfied with. So I'll pass it to Tim to take through a few more differences between the two types of surveys.
Mentioned, quality of life very similar between the scientific and the consultation survey. In terms of the top issues in the CVRD, you see that on the scientific survey side, unhoused again is the top issue, top 3, and also first most important. And for the consultation side, again, as Ellen mentioned, this group tends to be a little bit more engaged with municipal issues and things like that. So they're gonna say that the taxation, municipal government spending is the top issue amongst the top 3, as well as the first most important issue. Unhoused for the people who participate in the consultation survey is actually in 5th place in terms of their top issues at 17% in the top 3 and 7% naming it as the first most important issue. And also, if you look at the scientific survey side, the taxation, municipal government spending is further down the line as well. So that's kind of interesting how those positions are kind of reversed between the scientific survey and the consultation survey. Again, you'll see that very similar placings for services in terms of positive satisfaction with those services. Most important services, there's some differences as well between the consultation and scientific. The top ones for the consultation survey is water and sewer, utilities, fire services, parks and trails, while we have emergency management more important amongst those who completed the scientific survey. And final slide here in terms of some engagement elements in terms of how people engage with the CVRD in the past year amongst the people who completed the consultation survey. Again, reflecting their more engagement or more involvement with the regional district and just with municipalities in general. You'll see that there's a big difference between 4 and 10 they attended community or town hall meetings, compared to only 17% who said this in the scientific survey. Most of the other proportions are fairly similar. More people in the consultation survey also said that they contacted an elected representative to share their opinion. In terms of fairly similar results in terms of preferred methods of receiving information and preferred methods to share feedback. So we still have by email tops for both surveys, and also sharing feedback via email for both surveys at the top. Consultation survey had had third most preferred method as on the CBRD website, and also a bit of difference in terms of they tend more to use the engagement platform, the Plan Your Couch and engagement platform amongst the people who completed the consultation survey. So that is our quick summary of this year's community satisfaction survey, and I'm not sure if there's time for questions from the directors. So yeah, we welcome them if you do have any.
Thank you very much. Yes, I have a speakers list growing. And we'll start with Director Douglas.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. One of the surprises for me with the survey was not just the top 3 issues identified, but the top 4. In that, clearly 2 of these, you could argue 3 of them, we have almost no control over at the local government level. So unhoused is the first. As Mayor Staples could point out, her and I are dealing with this on a daily basis, and continually being reminded that we have very little control over supportive housing, mental health facilities, drug policy, and treatment and recovery centers. So I get why folks would identify that as the big issue that they're facing in the community, but am a bit frustrated as well that that's identified as an issue where local leaders should do more when we really don't have the ability to do a lot more except advocate to the senior levels of government and try to organize folks in our community to also advocate to the senior levels of government. A couple of the other items as well, there was reference there to housing affordability, another area where we have very little control over at the local government level. If we want truly affordable housing, that does involve applying to the senior levels of government. And then the last issue there was with regards to healthcare, which I know, Director Wilson, for example, has been advocating for working with some of the local healthcare groups in terms of expanding access. But it's another one where, again, it's advocacy. We don't really have any direct control over that as at the local government level. So I guess my question to the folks from Ledger is, when these calls were being made to members of the community, was it clear to them that you weren't just asking about what's an issue you see in your community, that it was an issue you see in your community and one that you want your local leaders to do more about?
Yeah, great question, and a common challenge within doing any sort of public affairs, community, provincial, federal research is that day-to-day residents often don't quite understand what each level of government is responsible for, and they will give issues that perhaps are out of that level of jurisdiction. For this particular question, it was phrased, in your opinion, what are the top 3 most important issues facing Cowichan Valley in order of priority that are issues you feel should receive the greatest attention from your local leaders? So even though they're not necessarily issues that you have direct control over, showing that you are giving them attention, are aware of them, and are understanding of them, I think can go a long way to helping bridge that gap. And I think the next part is trying to help them understand that it's not within your control, but you are advocating on their behalf, and that will go along to helping build the trust in local leadership.
Good?
It's good,
Yeah. Director Wilson.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And thank you also to Director, or rather Mayor Rob, for bringing forward the advocacy parts here for things that we're not responsible for and or have no control. Sadly, this is a comment, and I'll get to my real question in a minute on this subject. The advocacy success rate is incredibly low. The failure rate is incredibly high. And that kind of takes off a lot of the stuff, we're going to do this, and after 2 years of working on what we've got nowhere. And I will stop my rant in a minute, but The phrase that I hear over and over again, I hear what you're saying. It's just a phrase. And I'm getting fed up with people saying it to me. But I'm not going to stop pushing this one. We'll keep on that. Okay, so back to the satisfaction levels. Let's look at the very low ones here. Very low satisfaction levels with land use planning and development. And this is down from 29% in 2016 to 13% now. And this may be a question for management. What are we going to do about that?
Ms. Miles Wilson. You're on.
Hi. Yeah, great question. Thank you for the question, Director. And so there's a number of things that we can do to address it. I would say in every local government survey I have seen, any group within the organization that is in a regulation type of function, usually it becomes the least popular in a public survey. And the fun, nice to haves usually get the highest ratings, just human nature. But we are in the throes of a development services modernization, and we all know the components of that. We did analysis of our land use services in 2021, I believe. Getting nods. I was not here at that time, but we did a significant review, and we're in the throes of kind of implementing the components of that, which you're all aware of. Regarding the challenges that may be expressed by folks that are, and I have read all of the verbal detailed responses to this survey as well to kind of get a sense, and it's kind of a smattering of input related to, frustrations around timelines that may or may not be ours. They may be provincial timelines. There may be customer service challenges related to that. So there's a whole kind of variety of reasons for things like this that are within our control and outside of our control as well. But I think staff are also open to looking at, digging into the issues deeper and getting information for different stakeholder groups that may be using our services in this department as well. And so this is just kind of giving us a sense of where we're at, and we can always investigate further and come up with other solutions.
Good, thank you very much. Follow up, please, Madam Chair. And I've got to ask a question about participation here. I think I saw a number of the total people of 630 or something, and that was that. I can't find it anywhere anymore. What was the total number of people that were interviewed in this particular one? 660.
For this particular one, there were 412 who participated through the random phones survey, and 667 participated through the open link survey. So over 1,000 residents in total participated and provided their feedback.
Okay, and that was over a two-week period, I think?
Over a 2-week period, about 2 weeks, maybe a little bit more.
And I've got to say that the numbers are very low and the time period is very quick. But I'll leave that one just as a comment there. And my final question here, on the high levels of satisfaction, their Parks and Trails satisfaction's very, very high. Good, that's great. Were the satisfaction, I can't find the actual question. Are they satisfied with the facilities, or are they satisfied with the funding models that we're using here? What was the actual question that was asked?
The actual question itself was, how satisfied are you with each of the following services in the Cowichan Valley? So that over the phone, they would have been read the services in a randomized order so that there's no bias that way, but it was prefaced as the following services within the Cowichan Valley.
No specificity, that one.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Just jumping in here, I'm wondering if anyone could clarify the statistical significance of the number of people that responded to both the scientific and the consultation survey. Just speaking to the idea that the numbers are low.
Yeah, I think Tim has the numbers more readily available from the larger report. Don't have the numbers off in my head.
In terms of, the consultation survey, we can't assign a margin of error to that because it was not a randomly selected survey. It was a self-selected sample. But for the scientific survey, the margin of error is plus or minus 4.8%, 19 times out of 20.
Great, and having the 400 or so contributions is considered statistically significant. I'm just looking for confirmation of that.
Yes, correct. When it's statistically significant within the margin of error, given that it was conducted through that random survey sample.
Thank you. Director Deck.
Thank you. Thanks for this. I'm surprised at 88%. It still seems high to me, given the fact that our youth have alarmingly high rates of anxiety and depression. So it doesn't appear that you have statistics for young folk. But, you know, when your children are having a rough time, parents and grandparents aren't having that much fun either. So I wonder, are we different in this area, or do you see this kind of result in other areas you've done surveys in?
I mean, to answer your first question, there are differences by age. What we look at, and I'm just looking at, I see Tim's looking at the same thing. When we break it out by age, those who are younger, the 18 to 34-year-olds, it's at 80% versus the 80%. Those who are 35 to 54, it's 87%, and 55 plus, it's 92. So we do see younger residents are having a tougher time. They do have lower satisfaction overall, but it is still 80%, which is high. But obviously, you want everybody to be as high as possible. And we do, when that's as part of the statistical survey, we make sure that we have a sufficient number of younger residents participating in the research to be able to provide analysis amongst them. Generally, it is more challenging to find younger people to participate in these surveys, so we have to work a little bit harder to do it, but we make sure that they are included and that the data itself from that survey is representative of the overall population by age, by gender, and by region within.
Thanks.
Follow-up?
Yes, I'm wondering if you see the same kind of patterns in other surveys or do you find some where youth are having, the statistics are lower in other areas?
This is pretty common with a lot of the municipal survey research that we do, in terms of seeing that younger residents are having a tougher time with and lower satisfaction. Affordability is more challenging for them. Housing can be more challenging for them, and that it becomes evident in other findings that we share, or in other studies that we conduct.
Thank you.
Thanks, Director Deck. Director Justice.
Thank you. So the chair started this question for me when she jumped in, but I will carry on. We received a letter from a resident, in fact, an ex-director who used to sit at this table, expressing concern about the low participation rates in the survey, amongst other criticisms. And one of our directors sitting at this table has also mentioned the low rates. And I raised this issue and I want to continue on because I find that this is an increasingly common criticism of research done at the municipal and regional levels, at least research that I've been involved in. People are constantly saying, oh, not enough people have participated, so how can we believe this? And I think this is based on a misunderstanding of the way scientific studies work and a growing mistrust in science generally. So I would ask you, are you able to explain very briefly, I guess, the basics of statistical sampling and why people can have faith in a survey, even though 412 people, only roughly 1% of the adult population, as was pointed out in the letter, responded? Why should skeptics believe this is a valid study?
That is a great question and one we encounter quite often. And so happy to take my attempt to answer it. The reason why we do it, and we call it a statistical study, there are different approaches. You can do it through telephone, you can do it through online. Telephone, especially within particular regions, we use that, and what we do is called random digit dialing. So of all the numbers within the region, we randomly choose, or not we, computers randomly choose residents to be able to provide their opinion. And because it's random, we're not focusing on one person over the other. Everybody's given the exact same opportunity to participate. Whether they answer the phone or not is their decision, but there's that randomization side of it. The statistical side of it comes from the ability to project those numbers out to the larger population, and that's why we often do. We just had an election on Monday, and we are able to project by using these approaches to be able to say that within the margin of error, we are accurate 9 times out of 10 or 95 times out of 100. So we also make sure that the results that we collect are representative of the age demographics, the gender demographics, and the regional composition in terms of where people are living, urban versus rural, so that each of those groups is represented to the proportion that they would be within the census population. So we look at the census population as well to make sure that if the area has 58% females, or that wouldn't be the case, 51% females, we will make sure that the data itself, we weight it to reflect the population. So through those different approaches, we can have the confidence that we are accurate, and then we can look to the election results, for example, to say that by speaking with, let's say, 1,500 Canadians, that's not a lot proportion of all of Canada, but we can accurately predict the popular vote within the margin of error.
Thank you very much. Good explanation.
Thank you for that. Okay, just so everyone has the heads up, I've got Director Istash, Morrison, Martman, and then Wilson. Director Istash.
Thanks, Chair. Just to quickly support the director's question and what the consultants were saying, I think it was 2 weeks ago, I got a phone call for a survey, and you could tell right away that it was going to be scientifically valid. Was the fact as soon as I said where we lived, they said, no, we've reached our criteria and we can't take any survey questions from you. Thank you very much. So I know at North Couch, and that was the case for one of the surveys we did, where as soon as they understood from probably using census data, had the representation in that area, they didn't take any more questions from that representative group, because that would be incorrect data because you would overweight one portion of the population. So as to then going to our other director, Deck's question, it's the same thing we saw in our economic committee at North Couch, and this is a very, very old community. It's it's a strength in a way, so that we have strong fiscal, secure people living here, but it's also an economic and a bit of a workforce weakness. And it's shown in this survey where over 55% are over 55 years old and generally aren't affected by affordability, as we see the demographics of income and 80% of the people owning homes. But real quick, that wasn't my question for it. Whereas one of the good things seen here, and this question is actually for staff, we see the rise in the email in here. So my question is, I love our new newsletter. So it's a 2-part question for you, because I love our newsletters, but then I shared it on another platform we're not active on. I always take the newsletters off other platforms and share them around myself. What is on the new newsletter, what's our current subscription rate and open rate? I know that's, you're proud of it, so it's probably off the top of your head thing I could ask. CVRD newsletter subscription rate, because it's a fantastic newsletter. If anybody read the one we just got this week, As we can see, it's jumped from 35% to 48% as the top method of receiving information.
Thanks through the chair to Director Stesch. I don't have that number offhand, but I'm glad that you are enjoying it as much as you are. I hope all the directors feel really positive about being able to share that that document and piece of informational material with their communities. Because we're still, we don't have our new website launched, but a big part of why, one of the back end pieces of our new website is going to be a much better subscription service for residents to sign up to receive things like that newsletter and other pieces as they come out. So we're currently still dealing with our old subscription service through our existing proprietary site. We're also utilizing Plan Your Cowichan through the subscription of all the people who have registered there to push it out as well. So I wish I could give you numbers, and I wish I could say they were glamorous and, you know, hitting 10% of inboxes across the region. I don't think they are, honestly, yet at this point, but I think that's one of our going to be the metrics of success for the new website when we can more accurately track it and make sure that we're hitting kind of a target level for how many people's inboxes we're reaching with this material.
Great. Well, that response is definitely in line with North Cowichan, because they said the same thing on our newsletter, is it's going to get better, and we finally just rolled over to a platform there because of the evolving for newsletters are so good and subscription model that people want. So we finally made that step. So then the follow-up to that is I always take CVRD information and reformat it and then link it on Blue Sky. The CVRD, I think, is currently one of the only mid to South Island local governments not on Blue Sky. CRD, CVRD, Nanaimo, Ladysmith, North Cowichan, every single South Island municipality are all on Blue Sky actively. In social media, it shows in the survey that we're down on Facebook and Twitter, but those are very political sites, as in the owners of those sites, and they're also divisive and toxic, whereas we've seen a very huge surge in local governments utilizing Blue Sky. So I'm just curious when we're going to at least create the CVRD account, and when can we see it being active? Will that be a need to come from the board? Is that going to come from the communication team?
Through the chair, that's a very timely question. You've kind of jumped ahead. About 2 weeks, we'll be coming to Committee of the Whole with a presentation on our social media kind of overview, but with the direction that, you know, we currently, you know, not to scoop myself a couple weeks in advance, but we do have a Blue Sky account secured with the same handle that we use for all of our other ones. So it's something that we're very aware of. We've been watching the climate in terms of how other local governments have been transitioning to that platform. But it's something that we want to bring to your attention and potentially get some direction in terms of whether we should proceed. I mean, obviously, it's an operational, I think, decision for staff to kind of use the channels that we think. But, you know, with a lot of other local governments getting away from X, formerly known as Twitter, and Blue Sky kind of replacing that, we just wanted to kind of paint that picture for the board and give you some idea of where we're thinking about going. So good on you for being ahead of the curve on that.
Yeah, I do share on behalf of the CVRD there regularly, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Director Morrison.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know if I just missed it, or I think I saw somewhere that the verbatim remarks weren't included in the survey, or were they there somewhere and I just missed them?
I believe they were provided as a follow-up. Sorry to, like they're not included in the direct report.
Yeah, so through the chair, what you have as an attachment to the agenda is the high-level summary report for the scientific portion of the survey. We have obviously verbatim comments. We have the results of the open link consultative survey as well, which can be circulated to directors following receiving of the high-level report. This is the report that we share with the community on the website and have that posted until we conduct another one. So it's certainly something that we could consider circulating around to the board on request. I'll leave that in the hands of senior management, though.
Okay, thank you for that. And because I would be interested, and I just want to touch briefly in that it was studied and remarked on by another director, and we've got this fairly top of mind unhoused population issue. We've got some concerning reputation around the land use services and the likes. And I appreciate the scientific nature of the information that has been provided to us, because unfortunately, most of the people that get in touch with us on an individual basis aren't generally singing the praises of the organization, but are more likely to have an issue or a complaint with the organization. So I'm really wanting to know if there was any specificity or anything, or do I just look at in the verbatim remarks around that particular area? I'm very interested in what we can do as a body on alleviating the issue of unhoused folks in our community. It just seems to take us forever to make any progress. So is there any comment on that? And then I've got one last comment afterwards.
Well, I won't pass this to the consultants. Through the chair, just to go back to that part of the survey, so that question in terms of what do you see as most significant issue facing the Cowichan region was something, again, that was kind of created a baseline for in 2016 and that we thought was valuable to carry forward. It's not leading in any way, so the responses are collected verbatim. So some people might have said unhoused, other might have said, people using drugs on the streets. What the consultants do is try to collate those in the best way they can to kind of group them into similar categories for presentation. So in no way is, and again, there's no leading into what service, like amongst the things that local government has responsibility for, again, not part of it. So I do think it's a really valuable thing for elected officials and for staff to know the temperature of the community in terms of what they see as the biggest concerns or challenges. As far as like how to interpret this data and how to make it useful, I think there's multiple ways that we're going to do that going forward. And there'll be opportunities, probably at your very next EASC meeting to even use some of the results in terms of decision making. So hopefully this provides a really valuable document, but in terms of breaking those down at the moment, I don't think that's the proper use of this time, or I wouldn't be able to do that for you anyways.
And fair enough. And just sort of as in closing, I'm the one that correlated the unhoused data with the land use issue, and that's very unscientific, but clearly an issue that we will have to grapple with. The last point that I'd like to make is, and well, maybe two quick things. There was no reference to COVID, and COVID was a big chunk of the gap between the last survey and now. So I would be curious if the consultants have any comment on whether COVID was mentioned. And lastly, and this is just about reputational awareness, in that as I say, most people come to us and they've got an issue, and CVRD doesn't rate very highly in their thinking at that time. Our reputation fluctuates, I guess is a fair way to say it. Any comment on just the CVRD reputational awareness in the community?
Through the chair, to answer, if I may, the second part of your question, Director, before passing it over to Tim and Alan. But I think what we've done, and one of the reasons why we did this in the 2019 survey, was we expanded upon what we had done in 2016. We included the ability for verbatim comments for people that were dissatisfied with particular services, so we could get a better sense of, well, because if you're dissatisfied, I mean, obviously our land use services department has multiple divisions, does a ton of work, so that's not really a great learning lesson for us if they just say they don't like land use services. So what exactly is it about it? So that was one of the enhancements that we had made to the survey. We've done a whole bunch of other ones between 2019 and again this year to try to make it as valuable as possible for us to understand the sentiment of the community. But I will ask Alan or Tim if they can maybe answer the first part of your question, because I don't have that off the top of my head.
And that was regarding the COVID responses. Am I correct? Or there were a couple pieces, and I just want to make sure I address the right one.
Remarks around COVID and its impact or not?
Yeah, I think with a lot of tracking, there weren't enough mentions to collate them into a grouping that was above 2 or 3% of mentions. So we could dive in if there was 1 or 2 potential mentions, but they weren't. If there's not enough in terms of the aggregate, they're not put in the report specifically. Tracking trends across British Columbia and across Canada. We ask it in lots of different ways and different research surveys. COVID in particular isn't prominent anymore. Ask me that the same question 2 years ago, it probably would have still been there, but it has declined enough in terms of when we're asking British Columbians in general what is most important, or Canadians what is most important. We're not seeing a high level of mentions about that specifically anymore.
Chair, may I follow up on mine? Sorry, I lost my own train of thought as I was responding to your question, Director. Just to go back to another difference, in 2019, we saw that rather than just doing the statistically valid survey, we thought it would probably be really important to have an open survey that anybody could complete simultaneously, so that we kind of get a sense of, are we only getting a certain set of results through the scientific one, and is it going to be completely different? I wanted to conduct simultaneous surveys because if they were dramatically different, then it gave good reason why we should pay people like Tim and Alan to help facilitate a survey on our behalf, so that we are getting statistically valid results. I was actually quite surprised in 2019 when we did it, through very similar numbers of responses, to see the results be very similar between the two. Obviously they deviate in certain ways, but overall I was very surprised to see, like you said, people who would be responding to the open link one might have a particular experience with the CVRD that they wanted to express either satisfaction or more likely dissatisfaction with. And as you can see, that repeated again in the 2025 survey, remarkably similar results between the two. So I think there's a pretty good level of confidence in looking at them both, and realizing that, yes, the people obviously, as Tim Allen showed, have a higher degree of familiarity with the CVRD, and obviously do have some kind of relationship or interaction that they're kind of building their experience upon. But overall, I'm still surprised to see that the numbers are quite similar, which I think we should take as a win as an organization.
Thank you. Is that good, Director Morrison? Okay, Director Wilson, you're getting saved for round 2. Okay, so we've got Martman, Nicholson, Beeston, and then Callio. The list keeps growing. Director Martman, you're up.
Thank you, Chair. And interesting questions, and thank you to the presenters. This is a lot of work, and no doubt some will have skepticism. I guess I don't have any skepticism that if you did this report over and over again, you would come back with the same results, and I don't know if I would have any more meaning, because I want more meaning. And so that'll be one of my questions in a minute about how to perform this exercise to get more meaning. The first question I have, though, over half my contacts by phone don't use this area code. So how do you ensure that you're representing the entire population of this area by phone numbers? Like, what's your magic that you weave here to make that happen?
The call center is able to target based on, again, I don't fully understand the technology, I will admit to that, but through the cell phone towers within a particular area, they can target numbers that are based within that area or that have been used within that area.
Okay,
So
and
they're able to target based on where the cell phone tower is at.
okay, yeah, it's just one of those. It's one of those things. So I'll take it that there's some technology here that someone's going to use it and weave magic around using the technology in a way that advances this survey. The question I have though is that it shows 80% ownership of land or home ownership. And so I'm looking for a sort of representation. Is that representing, what Stats Canada shows for our area, that we have 80% of people in our area that live here own their own properties? Because I'm just looking for how it represents, to the actual on the ground.
That's a great question. We balance the results age, gender, region. We don't have particular quotas on home ownership. I mean, the more targeted we are, the more challenging it is to find them, the more expensive it is, the longer it takes. But we can definitely look into it and see how it aligns with the census data. I just don't have that top of mind in my brain right now.
Yeah, and then just anecdote, that people that own their own properties tend to be fairly happy right now with equity in that. But I guess the other aspect, and I have one other comment after this one, Chair, is can you drill down the satisfaction by region? Because I noticed you break the regions down to central, east, south, north, and west. Can you give the satisfaction based on north?
We have breakouts within the data tables, northwest, central, or east and south. So it is possible. It's just not we didn't include it in the particular high level piece, but if there are questions around satisfaction levels, happy to dive in.
Yeah, I guess I'm just trying to get to drill down a little deeper than just the general area as a whole. I come from the north area. I'd be interested to see if that differs from the south or west or east, central. And I think the last question is more where I started from. I would want more meaning from this, and I guess where I come from in saying more meaning is things that local government can impact. And so would there have been a way, or is there a way to conduct a survey that would, basically when a person says, I want, housing is my most important thing, and you say, okay, thank you, that's provincial, it's mental health. So, okay, thank you, that's provincial. And so they work their way down until they hit one, they go, okay, yeah, that's local. And that would, for me, this is very useful for my provincial counterparts, but I'm wondering if you have any comment on that. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, I think I'll just take that quickly to say it's certainly something that we can design into the next iteration of the survey. With every deviation from kind of the standard that we have and adding more in, obviously there's costs associated with doing so. So anytime there's kind of verbatim or when they're on the phone, if they have to say, oh, okay, well, that's great, but how about another one? It adds to the time that it takes within the call center to complete a call. And it ends up becoming more expensive to fill our quota that we have for how many that we need for a statistically valid sample, and which is something we kind of agree to at the outset of the exercise. So just to say, it's something we can certainly do, and it's a really good point. If it'll be more valuable to also have that set where the first answer they give is kind of collected, but then it's also drilled down to make sure everybody's giving a issue or something that is controlled by local government. Certainly, we'll consider it for the next time.
I see Ms. Miles Wilson is going to chime in.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on Mr. Schumacher's comment as well, to say that the way that the question was posed was open-ended, and that it didn't specify you need to pick a jurisdiction per se. But I think generally in other surveys I've seen, and other even just general discussions with the public, there's not a very good understanding of what the different levels of government are responsible for. but the communication staff has produced a really good fact sheet that kind of lays out the different roles of levels of government. It is on our website, and I think we could send that out again, just so you have that to share at your town halls and public meetings and whatnot. If those questions come up, we can just kind of help to educate everyone on what we actually do as a local government.
Thank you. Director Nicholson.
Thank you. I really appreciated the survey, particularly that we had both the scientific side and the sort of the companion piece. And they were similar, but they're not the same. And I thought that was really interesting. And I'm focusing right now on the not satisfied people. There were 4 groups: bylaw enforcement, economic development, transit, and land use planning and development, that had over 30% were not satisfied in some way. And you collected comments, which you've summarized, which is great. It would be really helpful to see all the comments. And I was wondering if there was a companion piece. Was that asked of the people who, in the other set of people who did the survey? So is there more that we could look at here?
So through the chair to Director Nicholson, yes. All the verbatim comments are collected for the purpose of the high-level report. I think, for privacy reasons, we're not necessarily going to publish that in its entirety, and just for the sake of clarity and conciseness. But to answer your question, yes, within, and correct me if I'm wrong, Tim or Alan, but within like the actual data sets, like in an Excel document, and I think this kind of goes back to Director Martman's comment too, there is a way to look at responses based on area by area or by municipality, by age. Like through the Excel sheets, you can filter out and see how the responses went in any given area where the survey was conducted, and get really specific if you want to. But again, I think that's distributing that amongst the directors is something I'll just chat with the senior management team and figure out how to best provide that insight for you going forward.
So I'm not particularly interested in area by area, or I don't even want to see it myself, but I do think that there's probably information here that staff could mine in, for example, the bylaw enforcement area, the bylaw enforcement program, should look at some of those comments, because I think it's instructive, right? The transit one, you can see when you look at what they've summarized here, that transit really is about the fact that we don't have enough service, and we know that. So, and the land use planning and the economic development are interesting because it kind of brings out this issue that people are concerned about housing. So that kind of gets wrapped up in the servicing part of it. But there are other things in there that could maybe be helpful in improving.
Just through the chair, just to respond to that, just so you know the way that the survey is conducted. So when you saw that list of services, I think on slide number 2 or 3 there, where everybody gives their overall satisfaction with each, once you get through that list of, let's say, 12 services, if you said you were dissatisfied with at least one, but as many, up to all of them, the survey randomly selects 2 of those services to give you that follow-up verbatim question on. So I think what you're seeing in this high-level summary is just the 4, I guess, least satisfied services and some of the descriptions from the verbatim trying to describe why people were dissatisfied. But you will actually, in the data set, you'll see verbatim responses for pretty much every service, unless there was maybe Parks and Trails that was so high that it never actually got one for it. But it was a randomized process whereby to solicit verbatim, but not to be specific to the top one. It would kind of randomly selected 2 that you had said you weren't satisfied with, and that's where that's derived from.
Thank you. Director Beeston.
I'm just looking for some clarity, because when you say that the main concern was for underhoused persons or unhoused persons, if there's no follow-up to that or no depth to the question. You don't know whether the concern is because people are unhoused or because people have security concerns because of perceptions of increased crime or security or safety. So not having follow-up or more in-depth information means that the question doesn't actually give us any information. And to just assume that everybody's going, oh, you know, you hope everybody's worried about people that are unhoused. And to be able to say, oh, that's a provincial concern, so that's not in our purview. But if they are talking about safety or security or things, then that's a different aspect, and we should be looking at things differently in that regard. But if we don't have the follow-up question when that's brought up, we don't know how to proceed.
Through the chair to Director Beeston, we didn't ask a follow-up question in that, and we haven't in the past. So probably the number one reason why was just to keep it consistent in terms of a baseline. If we did add that in, just going back to the overall cost of the survey, you would be adding a significant amount of time to which equals money in terms of how Leger charges us to conduct something like this. So you would turn an already expensive survey into something even more expensive. And in the case of this question, you might be getting anecdotal feedback about issues that are not under local or regional government purview anyways. So I guess it's just kind of a cost benefit analysis that maybe we'll make before we conduct the next one when we're reviewing it, but a good comment for sure.
Thank you.
Director Callio.
Thank you. Yeah, this is a good survey. I mean, I looked at this and I looked back to one of the surveys we had at North Cowichan, and we had I think something like 24 people took the survey, and I asked if that was a statistically valid survey, and was told yes, that's true. So I mean, this one has 600 respondents, so it seems to me that that's a pretty good engagement. I know it's not a huge amount in the community itself, but statistics say that that's actually a pretty good engagement. The question I have is, looking through it and looking through the dissatisfaction, is with the bylaw enforcement here, and it says that with the officers and the follow-up on request is 24%, and that's almost a quarter of all the respondents who answered. So that looks to me like something that we need to work on, and I'm just wondering if at this time the CVRD is actually working towards looking at something like this and getting a better response time with our bylaw officers.
Through the chair, just before
Yeah.
Ann responds, just to clarify, Director, so the scientific portion of the survey was 412. I think you said 600 and something, which was that's the open survey, which was voluntary participation. But
Okay.
to your point, I think you're right. That is it doesn't seem like a huge number, but it's pretty significant in terms of how many people respond to the average survey that we put out on any number of issues. So, sorry, just wanted to make that point of clarification for anybody that might be just tuning in to it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And going to Ms. Cheryl for the bylaw enforcement question.
Thank you, Chair. So, I mean, for me, the results of the survey are very interesting, and of course, it's always concerning when you have services that appear to be rated lower than others, and so you want to understand why that is. As Ms. Miles Wilson noted, we're a bit of the Canada Revenue Services of the Cowichan Valley Regional District in terms of popularity, but no, in all seriousness, we do want to sort of understand, what it is that's driving the responses, and I think that there is some context that's lacking in terms of, who are the people and what is their understanding of the services that are provided. Did they have an interaction with with our services, or is this, anecdotal sort of observation? And I think in order to really understand, what the issues are, we really need to do more detailed analysis, perhaps a follow-up survey that's specific to to those services, perhaps follow-up surveys of individuals that we interact with, either through bylaw enforcement complaints or development applicants, et cetera. So there's lots of opportunity to discuss follow-up and the ability to get some more detailed understanding of what the real issues are.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Director Wilson, round 2, new information.
Yes. I've heard the word science and scientific thrown around more than once today, but I also heard the term mistrust, or was it distrust, of science. And I think that, I'll be quite honest here, that was thrown directly at me, and I don't mind that. That's fine. That's good.
Director Wilson,
but I've been
I don't-
involved in science for
Director
a long,
Wilson,
long
just a
time.
moment. So I'll say I've witnessed a lot of discussion, not from you or at this board table, but out in the public that relates to distrust of science. So I don't think it was directly.
Okay, I'll accept that then. But let me tell you, I've been involved in science for a long, long time, and the beauty of science is the ability to question, the ability to challenge. And that's what's happening here, right? Science doesn't accept, it doesn't go on blind acceptance of one result. Science goes back and looks again and again at different avenues, and that's what I'm trying to do here. I am questioning what's being held here. And that's not a distrust or a mistrust of science. Two things that were said by the two other directors here as well. One was more meaning, and another one was more information. That's the crux here. If you ask one question and you get one answer, it doesn't mean that that is the end result. There needs to be more. And the questions which have been asked here, to me, are not in-depth enough. I'll leave it at that.
Well, we can keep that in mind for the next time we do a survey and allocate more budget towards it. You want to follow up on that, Mr. Schumacher?
Since I'm here, if you'll indulge, every time I come before you, it's well over an hour, and this is no exception. So just to say, and I think not to respond directly to Director Wilson, but I think it's been said around the table, and just to go back to my initial comments, this is meant to be like at the highest level in terms of surveying the community. This is to get a really 30,000 foot picture so that we as staff and you as directors can kind of drill down and again figure out which areas for improvement need more work and how to prioritize those. And really this is supposed to serve as kind of a every 3 year ideally refresh to get everybody kind of recentered and recalibrated. And I think the end result is that all divisions within the organization are going to take this information away and incorporate it into their own work plans and project prioritization and everything that's done over the next couple of years. So again, to what Ms. Cheryl said, you know, these results can kind of help to illuminate things. They're not the be-all, end-all that we kind of just say, all right, we're making a decision on. It's like, maybe we should probe a little bit more into this issue. So again, just the intent of it is to be high level, and then we can figure out the areas that we need to focus on going forward.
Thank you. Okay, I have Director Douglas is the last speaker on my list, but of course I have something I want to say too. Go ahead, Director Douglas.
Yeah, I'll be quick. Just with regards to the low satisfaction levels with land use planning and development, I would just urge us all to be cautious in how we interpret those results. I know there was discussion how that might mean there's not enough development or we're not approving development fast enough, but if you do look at page 16, the number one reason why people raised that as an issue was because of sustainable development and better planning, which would indicate the concern is mainly around environmental impacts and poor planning practices. That though is only a 25 individuals elaborated on why they had a low satisfaction level with that service. So very hard to draw any strong conclusions based on such a small sample size. But again, would encourage everybody to look at that breakdown for why people raise that as an issue, which again wasn't because of based on this information, slow approval times or not enough housing or those other issues.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Schumacher. I was really excited to see this report come forward because it speaks to something that I'm really passionate about, which is the unhoused community that is within our community. And I think it's really important to see, especially after an election that was quite divided, to see where there is unity within our community, that we do all have a shared value of wanting to see solutions for the unhoused in our community. And so I kind of, want to come full circle back to Director Douglas's, initial comments about these things being outside of our control and that we've exhausted all of this advocacy. And that can feel really, it's a huge downer. It's totally the downer of this job. But I also think it's important for us now to zero in on what is within our control within this board. Our own policies, our development services regulations that we establish, our zoning bylaw that we're updating, and then also paying attention to where we are actually a part of that quality of life, how we contribute to that. The parks, obviously, really high, but our recreation facilities, as a parent, being able to have, summer camps to go to when I don't have school childcare. All of these things are really important to the quality of life of our community. Emergency management, that also goes to servicing the unhoused throughout the winter, and our team has done a phenomenal job. And then tying into local solutions for the unhoused, I look to the City of Duncan and the Village Project, which was, a pioneered municipal project that now the province is replicating throughout the province. And so I think we know our communities, we know the solutions that can work, and it's time to make this conversation, this survey is showing us that the conversation needs to be beyond just the municipal directors at our table. I think the unhoused situation has been really focused on the City of Duncan and City of North Cowichan. I think this is an issue for the CVRD to be a part of the conversation. The survey, I think, is pretty clear that, our communities expect leadership, coordination, and compassion, and that, investing in some of these services that I mentioned is investing in our residents' quality of life. So thank you so much for this survey. I really look forward to our budget discussions and remembering all of this nuanced discussion we had here and integrating that, which then will filter into everything the CVRD does, helps our residents. Ms. Boyd, where do we go from here?
We have question period.
We have a member of the public now. Welcome, Ms. Bernard. You know the drill.
Thank you, Chair Segal. Thank you, CVRD Board. My question today is regarding SR2. I'm glad I could be here in person, and if you got my correspondence earlier, you know why I'm here in person. So my question is, does this board have a robust strategy for addressing dissatisfied residents that is cooperation focused? And I'll also drop the follow-up. How can this solution be achieved in relationships at the, quote, kitchen table level instead of as data points?
What a wonderfully formed question. So in terms of, our strategy at this point, and you reference a robust strategy, but our strategy at this point is to take this information that we've gathered here and integrate it into our budget discussions, which allocates funding to improve some of these areas that are struggling or that the community is dissatisfied with. The cooperative focus, I love that you bring this up. So I just took a course recently with Ellie Mina on, governance, and he talks a lot about the knowledge pie that is so important. And it is made up by us at this board table, by our educated experts in staff, and the public. So it's all three that need to be considered as we move forward in, trying to deal with some of these issues addressed. The kitchen table idea, this isn't quite related, but I know I've been in discussions with our communications team around supporting directors to have either maybe sub-regional town hall style meetings. Some directors do them very regularly, others don't. And so trying to figure out how do we support all of our directors to feel that they're you know, they've got enough support to be able to connect with the community on a regular basis.
Marvelous. I'm really encouraged by the heart behind your words.
Thanks.
Hajsapka.
Ms. Boyd.
I've been challenged with something, but thanks to our specificity, I can't say it. Everybody makes fun of me. We can now call for a motion to adjourn.
Moved by Director Morrison, seconded by Director Douglas. All those in favor? Any opposed?